This is something different, y'all. We haven't really talked about this before. Bam! Y'all heard about this place? Etsy? Apparently, it sucks. Apparently, it just is horrible right now for creators or people that create the stuff that's on it. So let's find out, y'all. You guys ready for this one?
So, has anyone else seen messages like this on their feed lately?
Oh, I don't know. We might have. By the way, y'all, this is a new channel. This is Cactus Lady Creation. She's pinned down in the description on the YouTube video. So, y'all, go show her some love. Go subscribe. Go check out all of her videos and everything like that. TikTok, do the same thing. And let's see what she's talking about. Something about Etsy being crazy as hell.
Everywhere I go online these days, I see artisans and handmade businesses sharing their nightmare stories, which has made me wonder what is going on with Etsy. If you've ever wondered how a platform that began as a haven for artists and makers ended up driving so many creatives away, you're in the right place.
Ooh, let's hear it.
In this video, we'll discuss its humble beginnings, its rapid rise, and what on earth is going on with Etsy that has caused so many sellers feeling abandoned. All right, let's get into it.
Oh, you used to sell pottery on there, but you haven't in a minute. Curious to see what's going on. Leslie, there you go. See, that's why we do these things, y'all. But we have got to hit some goals. TikTok is mad as hell right now, y'all. 18 out of 100. Bam. Come on. We need it. Hit me with these things down there, y'all. Or TikTok's about to get crazy as hell. Literally, I can already see the overlords just going like, excellent. The
Etsy
birth
was
and rapid
founded back in
growth.
2005 by Rob Callan and his partners Chris McGuire and Chaim Skopik in a Brooklyn apartment. Their vision was pretty simple but revolutionary: to create a marketplace dedicated entirely to handmade goods, vintage items, and craft supplies. Facebook Marketplace wasn't even a thing back in these days. The main places to sell online were eBay or Craigslist, and if you were an artist, you might sell in person at a craft fair or a market. So this idea was pretty revolutionary. For artists and small businesses, it was a dream come true, a place to connect directly with buyers who wanted something unique and handmade items rather than mass-produced goods. With Etsy, it was all about authenticity, creativity, and building a space for small artisans and hobbyists who wanted to share their work with the world. Etsy quickly grew popular because it was like a community. There was a real sense of supporting small makers, and it gave artists a chance to focus on their work instead of worrying about building a website or finding an audience. In its early days, Etsy was the only place like it. The platform was easy to use and pretty low cost, with only a 20-cent listing fee and a 3.5% commission on sales, so most artists thought this was pretty fair. What made Etsy so special was its supportive, community-driven atmosphere. Etsy hosted forums, offered seller resources, and even provided business tips that were incredibly helpful for small sellers. There was a real focus on empowering artists and helping them succeed. By about 2010, Etsy had grown exponentially, with over 10 million active buyers and attracting buyers and sellers that were both disillusioned with mass-produced goods. The shop small and support local artists movements were gaining momentum, and Etsy began a central hub for these values. Etsy's growth was also fueled by the early days of social
Then what happened? What kind of craziness did they do?
media, which helped artists reach wider audiences. Suddenly, small creators could make a living, or at least supplement their income on Etsy, and buyers loved it too. They got access to one-of-a-kind items, personalized gifts, and a real connection with the person behind the product. As Etsy's popularity skyrocketed, naturally it started gaining attention from investors, which led to some significant changes that would ultimately shape the platform's future.
Oh, hell. And then not only the future, but the downfall. Etsy goes public and changes begin.
Fast forward to 2015, Etsy went public on the New York Stock Exchange. This was a big moment because it meant that Etsy had shareholders and was now under pressure to show profits. It was around this time that sellers and buyers started to notice some changes. For example, Etsy introduced Etsy Manufacturing, which began allowing more mass-produced items and raised concerns among many artisans.
Oh, you are crazy as hell. Hey, you know this place? It's really cool because you can get small, like unique, one of a one-of-a-kind pieces. Let's just change all that and mass produce stuff.
Etsy manufacturing was
Okay.
created to help sellers find manufacturers to form responsible partnerships and scale up their production. However, some sellers began seeing listings that seemed too factory made for a site that branded itself as a handmade paradise. Etsy assured its sellers that it would review these manufacturing partners, but it just seemed like the platform was straying from its roots. Etsy did make a lot of great improvements, such as focusing on mobile app growth and improved its seller services. Then in May 2017, Josh Silverman took over as the CEO, and a large number of layoffs took place, and as well as a shift of focus to profitability, which is exactly what he did. The new Etsy system was a lot faster and easier for customers to use. And they did invest in new marketing tools for sellers to find new customers and scale their businesses. Silverman joined Etsy's board in November 2016 and became CEO after an activist investor called for the company's sale. During his tenure, Etsy had grown from a low-key online marketplace for crafters to an e-commerce juggernaut with a market cap of over $20 billion. However, Etsy's successes didn't necessarily mean that the sellers would also grow. And then came some fee changes. Between 2017 and 2020, Etsy saw a series of changes that were aimed at increasing their company's profits. But these motives also introduced higher fees and more competitive pressures for the sellers. In 2018, Etsy announced its first significant fee increase, raising the transaction fee from 3.5% to 5%, and for the first time applying this fee not just to the product price, but to the fees for the product, as well as the shipping cost and gift wrapping as well. This decision
They said, man, we're tired of not making all that money.
caused an immediate outcry from sellers who felt blindsided by the increase. For many business owners, these new fees made already slim profit margins even thinner. Sellers who were used to paying Etsy a small portion of their sales suddenly found their overall costs rising, sometimes by double or more. It was a huge hit, especially for those who sold lower cost items or had to factor in higher shipping costs like international sellers. To put it simply, many sellers were forced to raise their prices, which risked making their products less attractive to budget-conscious buyers. Then, in 2019, Etsy introduced something called Offsite Ads, a program where Etsy would advertise sellers' listings across Google, Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms. While exposure from these ads could really help sellers, the catch was that it came with a hefty fee, up to 15% of each sale made through these ads. And here's the kicker. For sellers that made over $10,000 in annual sales each year, even if the seller didn't want or need the additional exposure, they were automatically enrolled and couldn't opt out. For a lot of sellers, these fee changes felt like a betrayal of the platform's original values.
That is crazy as hell. They said, oh, you sell more than $10,000? Well, you're going to take commission anyways. We're using that stuff because people actually buy your stuff and we know it. So if we put it up on all these other places, it's going to make us even more money.
Etsy had always been about supporting small, independent artists and makers, but now it seemed like Etsy was prioritizing revenue growth and expansion, even at the expense of sellers who built its reputation. Sellers took to forums, social media, and even organized petitions, trying to push back against these changes, but Etsy largely stuck to its new policies. Sellers began to feel like Etsy was no longer working for them. In fact, it was working against them. But the final straw for many sellers lately has been Etsy's tendency to randomly shut down shops without notice or explanation. Imagine logging in to manage your orders only to find out that your shop has been temporarily suspended or in some cases completely deactivated. For many sellers, this is more than a minor inconvenience. It's a main income source suddenly disappearing with no clear explanation. This is terrifying. You're left scrambling, trying to reach Etsy's customer service support, but in many cases, the responses were slow or unhelpful. Why are shops being closed? Well, Etsy says that these shutdowns are part of their efforts to crack down on fraud and ensure marketplace integrity. While these intentions seem good on the surface, The execution has
You
been
are
widely
crazy as hell for
criticized.
that.
Legitimate shops with years of successful sales and positive reviews have found themselves locked out, unable to contact customers, fulfill orders, or even access their earnings. In many cases, sellers are given a generic message about policy violations, but are left guessing about what they actually did wrong. Some sellers have had their shops closed over minor infractions or due to Etsy's automatic systems flagging their account. And for those trying to reach customer support, the experience can be a nightmare. One of the biggest issues with these random shutdowns is the lack of clear appeal process. For many sellers, it feels like they're left in limbo, trying to prove their innocence without any guidance on what went wrong. And if their appeal is rejected, there's no way to reopen their shop or even recover their earnings from pending sales. It's a stressful and sometimes devastating situation, especially
That
for
is
those who
crazy.
rely on Etsy for their livelihood. In response, sellers have banded together to form online communities where they can share their stories and offer support to others going through the same experience. Some have created resources or guides to navigate Etsy's complex support system, but ultimately, the process still widely remains unpredictable. Over time, these shutdowns have pushed more and more artists and small business owners to reconsider their relationship with Etsy. While Etsy was once seen as a reliable partner, these shutdowns have made it feel risky for sellers who depend on the platform for income. For many, it's simply not worth the stress and uncertainty. For many small businesses, Etsy is still a vital part of their business and they still love it. But at this point, I've also heard so many horror stories. It just seems like it's hard to actually speak to a human at Etsy, and there also seems to be a lack of transparency. And also, there are a lot of seller fee increases. In April 2022, the transaction fee for sellers increased again from 5% to 6.5%, where it now stands at the time of this video. Etsy said this increase was a part of its plan to improve the platform in several ways, including more promotion, providing 20.
They said, we're going to start taking more of your money, but because we want to improve the platform. Use your money to improve the platform, you crazy. You're worth $20 billion.
24/7 live support and
here's an idea. Lower that. That improves the platform because you have more stuff on there because people are like, oh, I can actually sell on there again. Yay. Kimberly, thank you. I was about to say, y'all, we got to hit that goal. TikTok is mad as hell, y'all. We got to hit these goals. Come on.
moving listings that don't follow Etsy's policies. However,
TikTok is doing the same thing that this thing's doing.
this increase was met with a massive protest, with thousands of Etsy sellers across the platform either putting their shop on vacation mode or leaving Etsy altogether. It's tough because I totally understand that Etsy does need to raise its fees in order to turn a profit and to provide services for all of the sellers on the platform. But it's also tough because the sellers need to also make a profit. And if their profit margin is suddenly getting thinner, it's also really difficult for them to stay on the platform. And a lot of sellers don't want to pass down that seller fee to their customers by increasing their product costs. So a lot of them just end up leaving the platform for that as well. Currently, here's a list of the fees to operate on Etsy. There's a listing fee that's 20 cents, which expires after 4 months. A transaction fee, which is 6.5%. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, not only charged on the item to sell it, but also on the fees for the product, such as shipping and gift wrapping. So for example, if you sell an item that's $10 retail price with $4 shipping, Etsy will charge 65 cents for the retail and 26 cents on the shipping fee, which brings the total to 91 cents. Payment processing fee is 3% plus 25 cents in the US. When you sell a product, Etsy deducts a payment processing fee, which varies based on your payment processing service in your specific region, such as sales tax or VAT. And a lot of sellers just like Etsy only for this reason alone, because it handles sales tax and VAT, and so that they don't have to handle it. And it also handles currency conversion, which is really helpful. But it does charge for currency conversion as well. Currency conversion is 2.5%, and if your Etsy payments are in a different country than your product listings, then there's also a conversion fee for that. There's also a regulatory operating fee for my friends in the UK, France, Italy, India, Spain, Turkey, Vietnam, and Canada. There are also several optional fees as well, such as Etsy ads, which are cost per click. There are also offsite ads, and if you've made over $10,000 in sales in the past 365 days, this is mandatory. Etsy offsite ads appear on Google, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Bing, and Etsy publishing partner sites, which are publications like Martha Stewart and My Wedding, as well as the Google Display Network. There are also shipping label fees, and Etsy does provide a discounted service for printing postage labels for your package. There's a subscription fee, which is Etsy Plus, and that's $10 a month, and this includes some benefits. Also, if you're selling in
This
person,
includes some benefits? What kind of benefit? What would make that worth anything? Man, y'all are crazy as hell for that, Etsy.
there's only a 20-cent fee for this. So if you're selling
Oh,
in
only.
person at a market or a pop-up, Etsy will charge a 20-cent fee instead of that 6.5% transaction fee. And so you only have to pay that 20-cent fee plus the processing fees, for example, for a Square Reader, which will be about 2.6 to 3.5%, as well as pattern fee, which is $15 a month. And Etsy's pattern feature lets you design a custom store website, and you can start a 30-day free trial to see if it works for your business. And then after that trial period, you'll be charged a $15 monthly subscription fee. So between all the different seller fees, this has caused a massive income drop for many Etsy
that sounds crazy.
sellers who are diehard fans of the platform. There are also nightmare stories about Etsy shops being put into reserve, which is when a percentage of the seller's funds for each new sale of a physical item is not available for deposit for a period of time, meaning that shops have had their entire revenue stream suddenly paused, leaving many sellers in a lurch and unable to continue running their businesses. Also that, and the rising competition of other online marketplaces like Shein and Temu over the past few years have truly given Etsy a run for its money. But let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see a part 2 on more info about all of this. These changes aren't just frustrating, they're devastating for small businesses that rely on Etsy for income. Think about it. A lot of these makers don't have other sales channels, and many went to Etsy because it was known for supporting creators. Now, with random shutdowns and mass-produced competition and increased fees, it feels like Etsy is prioritizing its shareholders over the very community that it helped grow. So what's next for Etsy? Well, the platform is still growing, but it's definitely not the same as it once was. Etsy seems to be focused on becoming a mainstream e-commerce giant, which might mean even more mass-produced items and less focus on handmade quality. For some sellers, these changes push them to find other alternatives, like My Community Made or Maker's Place, or even creating their own website. And if you're a maker who's on another Etsy alternative, let us know in the comments below. And some sellers have even created their own websites, but that's a huge step, especially if you're used to Etsy's built-in audience and don't have the tech skills or budget to set up a new shop. More and more, we're seeing sellers build their own communities through platforms on social media, creating their own websites, or starting on alternative sites similar to Etsy that doesn't have Etsy's baggage. I'm personally a fan of starting your own website, especially if you're planning on being in business for a while. It may be daunting and the process might take a while, but it's definitely worth it to have that kind of control. And there are also
Well, I bet you this girl makes stuff, because look at all that yarn behind her. She's got hella yarn back there. What you crocheting?
myriad of ways of sending traffic to your website. So let me know if you'd also like another video on that. But that's the story of Etsy's.
This is actually pretty cool. It's something totally different than what we usually do. Cactus Lady Creation, y'all, on YouTube.
Rise and fall in the eyes of the handmade community. It started with a vision to support artists, but may have lost its way along the path to profit. If you're an artist who's currently on Etsy or used to be, let me know your thoughts below. I mean, did these changes affect you? And if they did, let me know. Or maybe they didn't and you still love the platform. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this.